Well, welcome to another Bible Truth broadcast. I'm Evangelist Tom Gillum. I'm an itinerant evangelist that believes in expositional preaching. I like to do it line upon line, precept upon precept. I like to do it in a series form. I like to do it with enthusiasm. It's a joy to have you on the broadcast today. I hope you'll have a Bible handy, a notebook, something to write with. You'll find our text today in Psalms 63. Psalm 63. We have now, for a good while, been preaching a series of messages on the six wilderness psalms, times when the psalmist would find himself in a wilderness, time of darkness, a narrow place, a place of unknown and insecurity, often accompanied with sorrow, heartache, tragedy, and difficulty. And we have noticed in these wilderness psalms that God would use a wilderness in the life of the believer as a leverage to move him from a low place to a high place, or to move him closer unto God. And so, as we've been looking at these wilderness psalms, we've been preaching on the subject of my Lord knows the way through, doesn't know the way around or under, over. All he knows is the way through the wilderness. All I have to do is follow. We noticed in Psalms 3 that he used this wilderness as a leverage to move the psalmist from fetters to freedom. Then also in Psalms 18, he used it to move him from fainting to furtherance. Psalms 27, we notice that he used it to move him from fear to faith. Then in Psalms 46, we found that he used the wilderness to move him from fame, being tricked and deceived, to fullness. Our last broadcast, we began to look at Psalm 63. This is the time when David found himself in the wilderness of Judah. Absalom and Ahithophel had conspired to take the kingdom away from David. David was fleeing for his life, and Absalom and Ahithophel was planning his funeral. But God will use this wilderness in the life of David to move him from a funeral to festivities. I tell you, oftentimes we'll be in a drab, dark, funeral like atmosphere. We're going to change that situation into festivities. We noticed on our last broadcast that David had a strong desire after God. Now, today, I want to look at verses 4 and 5. And notice that in order to move from this funeral atmosphere to a festive atmosphere, David had a stable devotion unto God. Oftentimes, a dark, drab place will be a good time for a devotion check to see how devoted we are to our Lord. I notice in verse number 4, there is a devoted service. The Bible said, thus will I bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. The little word bless has the idea of lifting one up, adoring one, elevating one, exalting one. David said during this dark, drab time, Ahithophel and Absalom have conspired to kill him and have a funeral. David said, in the middle of this, I began to extol and exalt and lift up the Lord. I notice also in verse number 4, David said, I will lift up my hands in thy name. You know, that's something I see very rarely at the house of God. Someone lifting up the hands, or someone lifting up both hands. there are two reasons why in the scriptures one would lift up their hands. One is that idle hands or hands that are hanging down or a sign that one has been overcome by the circumstances. Another reason to lift up the hands is to lift them up with the palms extended outward and upward to show the Lord that they are clean and that they are empty and ready to receive that which He has for us. I remember the old hymn that said, "Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love, at the impulse of thy love." Oh, how we need to in this hour. You say, "I don't feel like praising God. I don't feel like lifting up holy hands." I tell you what, in a dark, drab, funeral-like atmosphere, why don't you lift up your hands until you feel like lifting them up? There is a devoted service, and it begins to bring about a stability, a festive type spirit in the life of David. You say that's too simple, that's too elementary. I'm just not into that emotionalism. Well, I tell you, just stay in a drab, dead situation then. But I'm telling you today, oftentimes, in order to make our way through a wilderness, we'll have to praise our way through it. We'll have to lift Him up. See, when you're lifting Him up and you got your heads turned upward, it's hard to look down and be in a drab spirit. Not only do I see in our text there is a devoted service, but I see there is a devoted satisfaction. Look at verse number 5. He said, "My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness." That little word satisfied means to be content. Oh, I tell you, oftentimes funeral drab atmosphere, that dark cloud will come over our hearts and our heads because we are discontented with the circumstances that God has arranged for us. David said, "I'll be satisfied as with marrow and fatness." I was thinking about that marrow and fatness. There's nothing any better than a good ribeye steak grilled on the grill, and that little edge of that fatness just right around the edge. Just let it get good and brown and toasty. Oh, I know we ought not to eat that. I know it's not any good for us, but oh, what a satisfaction it brings to our taste buds. I'm telling you today, David said, "My soul shall be content, the fatness and the marrow of my God." And he says, "With my mouth shall I praise thee with joyful lips." David begins to not only lift up his hands in this dark, drab situation. You say, how in the world did he do it? Oh, I hear him all the time talking about, boy, I got a free will. I've got a free will of choice. But here's a good time to exercise it. By your own choice, begin to lift up your hand. Begin to open your mouth in praise and adoration unto our God. David said in verse number 6, we're talking about a devoted satisfaction. He said, "When I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches." I hear oftentimes people that are having a hard time with depression and going through a difficult situation. They say the night time is the worst. Oh, David's lost his kingdom. Night has set in. Not only is it dark spiritually, but it's dark physically. David, what are you going to do? He turned his bed into a cathedral of praise. He said, "I meditated on thee." That little word meditate means to muse and to think. Oh, we like to muse. We like amusement, no thinking. Oftentimes in a dark, drab area, we let our minds run in our worries and all of our difficulties. David said, quit it. He said, begin to fix your mind on things above. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. Let the things of this earth grow strangely dim, the light of his glory and grace. Not only is David find a stable devotion by a devoted service, and now a devoted satisfaction. I notice in verses 7 and 8 there is a devoted shadow. David said, because thou hast been my help, therefore in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice. My soul followeth hard after thee. Thy right hand upholdeth me. David said, in this funeral drab atmosphere, I'm going to run and hide underneath of your wings. He says, I'm going to pant hard after you. I'm going to draw closer to you with all of my strength. Oh, I'm telling you today, as the old songwriter said, under his wings I'm safely abiding. Though the night deepens and tempests are wild, under his wings who from his love can sever? Under his wings my soul shall abide, yea, safely abide forever. I tell you today, there can be no funeral when someone is shouting praises unto God. There can be no funeral when one is running and hiding under the precious wings of God. David said, because I'm hiding under your wings, because I am pursuing hard after you. Look at verse 7. Verse number 8, he says, thy right hand upholdeth me. Oh, today, my friend, I was thinking some time ago, oftentimes I have had a tendency when there's trouble just to run and hide, and then the next time there's trouble and run and hide. And I've just got to the place here lately, I told the Lord, I said, I'm just going to stay under your wing. I'm just going to stay in the secret place. There's no need of running back and forth, back and forth. I'm just going to hide in you and stay there, because I know once this storm's over, there's another coming. And I want to find hope and strength in you. Well, it's been a joy to have you on the broadcast again today. Remind you of our study website, TomGillum.com. We have weekly Bible study there, several hundred archived there. Have an audio section there. Have a daily devotional page. Hook up to these YouTube broadcasts. That's TomGillum.com. Let me remind you, too, if you have a prayer request, maybe you're interested in a meeting. I'm an itinerant evangelist. Maybe you got a question. You can email me at tbgillum@aol.com. Thanks for listening to the broadcast.